Cities all across the country are impacted by guns, and South Bend certainly is not immune. But there are some signs the problem may be getting better. In 2017, there were more than 100 shootings in the city. 16 of them were deadly. This year, though, the numbers are down. But everyone agrees one shooting still is too many. WSBT 22's Veronica Ortega is here now with a closer look at how South Bend is trying to stop gun violence.
The Group Violence Intervention Strategy, or GVI, was introduced in 2013. It gives individuals involved in gang and gun activity a choice to change or face a new level of law enforcement attention.
We don't want it to fall.
We don't want it. You got to play a lot of games.
50-year-old David Taylor was born and raised in South Bend. He says when he was growing up, things were different.
It was a lot of fun 50 years ago. Being able to go outside, leave the doors unlocked, you know what I'm saying, windows up, you know. But nowadays you can't.
Things changed for Taylor after his mom died. At just 9 years old, he found a new family on the streets. Petty theft eventually turned into something more.
The drugs didn't come into effect until the 80s. But once the 80s hit, that was my trade of choice.
The husband and father tried to shield his family from the truth of his earlier days.
What I did in the street stayed in the street. You know what I'm saying? When I came home, I was daddy. You know, they didn't understand where I was getting my money from. You know what I'm saying? They thought I worked every day.
His life of crime ended in 2007 when he was arrested for dealing drugs and sent to federal prison.
I wasn't afraid at all. Because if I was afraid, I wouldn't have been out in the streets. But I didn't have no fear of that. The only thing made me realize that was when I got incarcerated.
Surrounded by people with life sentences and thinking about his loved ones, Taylor decided to make a change.
And they said, you don't want to be like me. I would rather see you be better than me.
Now he's part of South Bend's Group Violence Intervention Outreach Program, Stand Against Violence Every Day, or SAVE. He visits schools along with Pastor Kenneth Lee and GVI Supervisor Isaac Hunt. As mentors, they guide kids and teens, teaching them to communicate with words, not violence. This week's theme, superheroes, a lesson that was taught to Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility.
Very good, guys.
I want to give them a solid foundation and an opportunity to make sure that they can be whatever they want to be in life and not be held back or limited by their environment.
Devetta Farrow, the principal at Coquillard Elementary, says when she first started at the school, the atmosphere was tense. Some of these kids know the sound of gunfire. One boy witnessed a shooting with his own eyes.
You could tell he was traumatized. I mean, when he would go to class, he couldn't focus. He was nervous. He was worried that something would happen. He was worried about his family.
School became a safe haven. So did spending time with mentors who listen. One young man went from aggressive toward others to setting goals and big dreams.
When we asked him about what he wanted to be when he grew up, and he said mayor. And then what's their second goal? President. So very marked change in his attitude, even his belief in himself.
Isaac Hunt also served time in prison. He says perception is the key to understanding gun violence. Surrounded by vacant houses, rival gangs, and drugs next door can have a psychological effect.
You become numb to it. They have so many barriers in front of them that they don't get the opportunity to really just go to work every single day, because when they fill out the application, it automatically goes in the trash can because it has a felony on it.
Isaiah Whitmore knows what it's like to be given a second chance. He just got out of the county jail for selling drugs. Still, it wasn't a lifestyle he was prepared to leave.
I did not decide. The police decided for me. They decided for me, and then that's when I came to this program. And this has been the best thing that happened for me.
What would you put on your application?
This year, GVI has 45 participants. 17 are employed, 11 are gaining work experience at Goodwill, and 10 clients have completed 180 days of employment. It's a first step for Whitmore, who wants to go back to college.
That's probably what I like most about the program. A lot of people here have already been through it, and they overcame. So it let me see like it really is possible to change.
Victory today is mine.
Earlier this month, faith leaders and the GVI had a peace walk. Community leaders and police worked together, showing a united front. The rally cry of "Stop the Violence" resonated throughout the neighborhood, a message that should start at home, continue at school, and in life. Just ask David Taylor.
Know that killing your own ain't gangster. Make a change before it's too late. Because once you pull that trigger, it's over.
For the first time since the outreach program was started, it was given funding from the mayor's office. Over the next 3 years, it will receive a total of $389,000. Before, the program was supported by Goodwill and more than 70 social service providers. The money will help to hire more staff. The hope is to help more people. In the studio, Veronica Ortega, WSBT 22 News.
Thanks, Veronica. And for gunshot survivors, the road to recovery can be a long one. WSBT 22's Caitlin Connon sat down with some of those survivors to talk with them about what the bullets did to their bodies and about how being shot often triggers post-traumatic stress disorder.
This is the damage that a bullet can do, life-altering things. You know, yeah, I'm grateful I survived, but it forever changed my life. It forever changed me physically, and that's never going away.
Our week-long look at the impact of guns continues tomorrow on WSBT 22 News at 6 as we talk more with multiple shooting survivors.
Already this year in South Bend, 5 people have died from gunshot wounds.
But 46 people survived. WSBT 22's Caitlin Connon is here. And Caitlin, you spoke to some of those survivors.
That experience changed their lives, and both will have scars forever, both physical and mental.
Monique Kaufman and Mitch Kaiser have lived different lives. They may not look like they have a lot in common, but they have one important similarity. They both have been shot. Kaiser was a police officer.
As we're patrolling, we see a car run a stop sign, squealing the tires.
Kaiser and his partner pulled the car over to find a couple fighting inside.
So I'm standing there talking to the people in the car, and just out of the blue, kind of simultaneously, I hear a gunshot, see a muzzle flash out of the corner of my eye of where it came from, and I'm struck in the left ankle with the first shot, and that shot takes me down to the ground.
Kaufman was getting food after a concert that her abusive boyfriend didn't want her to go to.
He rammed his car into my car in the drive-thru, and somebody was behind me, so he blocked me in. And at this point, I'm just like, is this really happening? Like, my friends are in the car with me. This is crazy.
Kaufman tried to drive away. Her boyfriend started firing.
From him ramming me to him shooting me, it literally took probably like 10 seconds.
Kaufman's instincts pushed her toward flight. Kaiser decided to fight.
I'm trying to get up, hold my gun, and run that way, because that's, it's cliche, but that's what police officers do.
Both were hurt pretty badly.
I woke up the next day and I had 30 staples in my stomach, and my arm was stuck like this. My bone was completely shattered, so they had to put a rod in my arm.
The shot that hit me in the right side of my buttocks actually traveled up in my body, went through the sciatic nerve, went through my colon, and then lodged in my stomach.
Kaiser was hit 4 times, and he would spend the next year in physical therapy.
There would be days where entire physical therapy would last 5 minutes. It would consist of me taking 2 steps, and then I'd have to spend the next few days on painkillers because the pain is just so intense from it.
Kaiser says most things are back to normal, but he can't move his left foot or ankle, and they're in constant pain.
The best way to explain this is if your foot falls asleep. You know that pins and needles. I've got the pins and needles all the time. It's just something that I've learned to live with.
Eventually, Kaiser had to retire from patrolling.
That was difficult to do because I really, really enjoyed working the road. But I wasn't going to keep doing that, feeling that I'm putting myself or other officers at risk because of the constant pain.
Kaufman's physical recovery only took 2 months. The mental recovery took a lot longer.
I feel like I should have talked to somebody to be able to let it go, because I was really, into my Bible and everything after it happened, and I forgave, but I feel like, in a sense, I feel like that was a lie.
Kaufman had trouble dealing with her boyfriend's past abuse, and the media coverage of her shooting wasn't always friendly. Headlines like "stripper shot at drive-thru" made the whole thing feel like a joke.
I felt alienated. I felt alone. And in turn, by me being scared, I didn't go through and press charges.
That fear turned to anger.
I almost felt like I had to come back, like, not thuggish, but I had to, like, come back, like, oh, like, it made me start acting like that. Like, trying to,
Made you want to be hard or
Right,
want to
because
seem
if
like
you
had a
live by the gun, you die by the gun.
Both she and Kaiser say would-be shooters need to understand the consequences.
This is the damage that a bullet can do, life-altering things. Yeah, I'm grateful I survived, but it forever changed my life. It forever changed me physically, and that's never going away.
That's somebody's mother, somebody's son, somebody's brother. When you play video games, you get lives back. When you die, when you get shot, it's like your life flashes in front of you, and it's so quick. And there's so many bullets out there that you only need one shot.
Kaufman and Kaiser's lives were saved by good doctors, and in our area we have a level 2 trauma center, the only one for 90 miles. Todd?
Caitlin, thank you. 90 people survived gunshots in South Bend last year. A big reason for that is because of the Level 2 Trauma Center at Memorial Hospital. A team of doctors at the trauma center work together to put people back together after they've been shot, and they save a lot of lives, but it wasn't always that way. The trauma center in South Bend has only been in operation since the mid-90s.
If you don't have a trauma center, you definitely are at a deficit. And our job as a Level 2 trauma center is to save lives. And we're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we'll always be there for all those patients that need us.
Tomorrow night at 6, Caitlin tells us about those doctors and the other medical professionals who know exactly what it's like to be impacted by guns.
Every 15 minutes. That's how often someone is killed by a gun in the United States.
WSBT 22's Caitlin Connon is looking at the impact of guns. And Caitlin, there are a lot of medical professionals in our area trying to prevent that.
Todd, Memorial Hospital in South Bend is the only Level 2 trauma center within 90 miles. Doctors say people are still frequently coming into the trauma center with gunshots. Having access to top-of-the-line trauma units means a lot less people are dying, but there's still a lot of work to get you from being shot to full recovery.
When you've been shot, things start moving quickly.
Organized chaos.
The first person you're likely to see is an emergency medical technician.
If there's a situation where we have copious amounts of bleeding, we can apply a tourniquet if we have to.
Stopping the bleed is vital, but sometimes there's just too much blood.
If you get shot through the heart or aorta or superior vena cava with a high-powered rifle, death will be near instantaneous. But you can live for seconds or minutes after what will be a fatal gunshot wound. But to that person, it would probably seem like an eternity, because every breath is one breath closer to your last.
If it's not too late and the EMTs can slow down the bleeding, they'll try to replace what was lost. EMTs use a lot of IVs, big ones.
It's just like a garden hose.
Those EMTs can only do so much in the field.
Getting to the hospital quickly and a patient into surgery is the best chance for survival.
As soon as they activate the radio and contact us and let us know that they have a seriously injured individual coming in, some 20-odd pagers are activated.
Those pagers belong to doctors and nurses from all kinds of specialties, from cardiothoracic to neurology. Together, they'll see just how bad you've been hit.
The next thing is to take care of the devastating injuries and to do what's called damage control, and to get all of the organs repaired as best as possible.
That damage isn't just caused by the path of the bullet.
It's like a shock wave. So that cavitation process is like a shock wave that damages and breaks up tissue as it's traversing through the tissue.
The bigger the bullet, the more powerful the gun, the more damage you'll see.
They, instead of just passing through a bone, they will shatter a bone. And instead of passing through a liver or a solid organ, they will what we call pulpify the organ, which basically just destroys the architecture completely.
Some organs, like the liver, are pretty resilient and can regenerate. Other organs aren't so tough.
If you have a gunshot wound to the head with virtually any type of handgun or rifle, that death is, I would say, near instantaneous.
Those who survive a gunshot wound are often left with life-changing effects like paralysis. Many also suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder.
They realized that they were very close to death.
Those deaths, that fear, might all be preventable.
I do believe if people could see the severity of these things, it might change the way that they carry on and look at how dangerous these things can be, and perhaps might cause behavioral change.
Dr. Thomas says he often sees the same people in his trauma bay over and over, and unfortunately, many of those patients end up dying in the end. He and the medical community aren't the only ones trying to stop those deaths. Todd?
Caitlin, thank you very much. Community leaders are trying to fight back against gun violence as well. After her son was shot to death in a restaurant, Bobby Woods helped found Mamas Against Violence. The organization marches to raise awareness for gun violence and tries to teach people better ways to resolve conflicts.
We all have a responsibility. We're all in this together. No matter what side of town we live on, no matter what our nationality is, no matter what color our skin is, we're all in this together.
Bobby Woods isn't alone in the fight against gun violence. Tomorrow night at 6, Caitlin will introduce you to other community leaders who have been impacted by guns. Well, South Bend had 100 victims of gun violence last year. So far this year, 51 people have been shot.
WSBT 22's Caitlin Connon is here with us tonight. And Caitlin, we're talking about people from all over the community who are trying to really bring those numbers down.
Jennifer, those people are trying to fight the perception that South Bend might be one of the most violent cities in the state. The fact is that's not true. Homicide rates are much lower now than they've been in decades, but people are still getting shot, and everyone wants it to stop.
I think that might have been his senior year.
This is Bobby Woods' son, Terrell. He was a father to 5 with a big smile.
He was always messing around. He was goofy like that.
15 years ago, when Terrell was just 28, he got into an argument with his ex-wife's new boyfriend in a restaurant. Terrell thought the fight was over. The other man did not.
He left out, went to his car, put his food in the car, reached under his seat and come back with a .45 and shot 11 rounds.
Terrell was hit and bled out. He was unarmed.
It was senseless.
But Terrell's death followed a predictable trend in South Bend. While it was long before Mayor Pete Buttigieg took office, he says most gun violence in the city is between two people who know each other. And it happens inside of a group that only makes up 1/2 of 1% of the population.
If you are a member of that 1/2 of 1% or are related to or live near or care about anyone there, that starts to look like a larger number of people. A large number of people in this community who are urgently and justifiably demanding that more be done.
Buttigieg and other city leaders created the Group Violence Intervention Program as a response to that demand. But the city can't fight violence on its own.
Families, schools, churches, employers, all of us can do more to make this a safe community.
And I need all these.
So Woods took that work into her own hands through her organization, Mamas Against Violence. The group marches the streets to gain awareness and hosts conferences teaching better ways to solve conflict. They also try to find ways to keep kids out of trouble.
How many places do you know of in South Bend? Now I'm talking about inner city kids or Afro-American kids. What do we have here for them to go to?
Pastor Kenneth Lee says bring them to his church, Kingdom Christian Center.
This is one of them.
The congregation had its own brush with gun violence when a shooter opened fire before Bible study.
But after that, it did make us understand and know that we've got a responsibility to this neighborhood, and we've got to do whatever we can to make our city safer and better.
So he decided to take his Bible studies outside into the street. Every Wednesday night, he grills brats and hot dogs and invites kids out for a meal.
The reason why some of these kids get into gangs is because they're looking for love. They're looking for somewhere to be a part of. So we're trying to do that in a positive way, put something good in them, show them that you give back to the community, and you build up your community, not tear it down.
Pastor Lee says the South Bend Police Department has followed suit and hosts its own cookouts.
I've never, in 41 years of being in South Bend, seen this kind of interaction with our kids where it wasn't a negative situation.
And that's exactly what Chief of Police Scott Ruskowski wants to see. He's trying to fight the perception that cops aren't your friend.
In the past, what we did was essentially treated a head cold with chemotherapy. We would write tickets, impound cars, and make arrests. The law says we can, and legally justified in doing so, but is that the right thing to do?
His answer, no. Crackdowns breed mistrust. So now his officers practice relationship policing. Last year, officers did more than 7,000 walking patrols, and they're on pace to double that number this year.
There is absolutely nothing better than getting out and talking to neighbors and find out from their perspective. They see it 24/7, 365. We see it when it's reported. And we need to be in the mix, in which we've been doing.
But just like anyone else fighting gun violence, police can't do that work on their own.
I feel that, they're there to serve and protect. And if you want them to come in and serve and protect, you got to make them feel welcome.
Woods has a simple message for people who aren't on board.
If you're not a part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
Woods and everyone else I spoke to really stress that it will take everyone to fight gun violence. All of these programs and efforts are good on their own, but when they come together, community leaders say that's when we can see real change.
This video of active shooter training at Penn High School is a little hard to watch for some, but preparing for the worst is becoming necessary. A CNN report released in May shows 23 school shootings in the first half of 2018 where someone was hurt or killed. One of them happened close to home in Noblesville, Indiana. A Mishawaka psychotherapist says these incidents are having serious psychological effects on children. She says empathizing with their feelings helps them feel less alone.
That's really scary. I get it. I would have been scared too if I were there with you. I wish I was. It's really, you're really angry and you have every right to be. This shouldn't have happened. It's not okay.
Tomorrow night at 6, we dive deeper into the psychological impact school shootings have on children.
If I die in a school shooting.
It's the frightening phrase many students have been forced to consider. More than 150,000 students have experienced the shooting on campus since the 1999 Columbine High School massacre.
That's according to ongoing research by the Washington Post. While districts across the country have stepped up security, many kids still don't feel safe. Experts say the trauma is significant for kids who have seen, heard, or been involved in violent situations. A CNN report released in May shows 23 school shootings occurred, leaving someone hurt or killed. One of those hit close to home. In May, a student and teacher were hurt when a middle schooler opened fire at Noblesville West Middle School. Incidents like these have an impact on kids who expect to feel safe in the classroom. And for the survivors, healing mentally can often take longer than recovering from the actual gunshots themselves.
I'm excited, honestly.
Ari Kirsch spent her last few weeks of summer preparing for life away from home.
My roommate and I are coordinating the colors and stuff we're doing for our dorms, so that's gonna be fun to get decorations and things.
The 18-year-old Penn High School graduate is officially a college student.
So I'm going to University of Wisconsin-Madison, and it's a really big school.
While Ari's mind right now is on making friends and getting acclimated to her new surroundings, just 7 months ago, on Valentine's Day, her focus was on Florida. On a day when love is supposed to fill the air, the sound of a gunman's hatred ricocheted through the hallways of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. 17 students and staff gunned down.
When you think about it, wow, that could have been my school, that could have been my friend, or that could have been someone that I just passed in the hallway every day.
That day became all too real for Ari and other teens when Parkland students started making their voices heard.
We say no more.
Stoneman Douglas, a school in Florida, it was like a similar size to Penn and in a similar neighborhood to Penn. Like it was like a fairly nice area. You wouldn't think that something so awful would happen there.
And she isn't alone.
Have you specifically had any child come in and say, I'm scared to go to school because of guns?
Yeah, children are worried about that all the time.
Dr. Erin Leonard is an author and child psychotherapist in Mishawaka. She sees more than a dozen children in her office every week.
Not an easy thing for a child to understand, so they feel extraordinarily confused. They feel very, very unsafe, and so it's very difficult for a child to kind of reconcile.
She says anxiety and depression is much more prevalent than in years past, and that fear continues to increase with each mass tragedy.
The most powerful person in the room in every situation is the person with the gun.
Every child deals with trauma differently. Dr. Leonard says sometimes it even affects their health. Ari and her peers decided to face their fears and take action.
This is what democracy looks like!
She helped organize a campus-wide walkout at Penn. Students across the country walked out, marching to end gun violence, demanding stricter gun laws, and most importantly, they marched for all of the students killed in a school shooting.
I think that when you have a bunch of 17, 18-year-olds like tweeting about it all the time and making their voices heard, you're like, wow, like I want to make my voice heard too.
Ari transformed her emotions into action, but not every kid can quickly come to terms with such devastation.
Feeling unsafe in a place that's supposed to be safe, in a place that they've been told is safe, is very difficult because they're not sure whether to trust that again.
Home is where the healing lies. Dr. Leonard says parents can help their children get through difficult times by recognizing their feelings with empathy.
That's really scary. I get it. I would have been scared too if I were there with you. I wish I was. You know, that it's really, you're really angry and you have every right to be. This shouldn't have happened. It's not okay.
She says when parents empathize with their feelings, children feel less alone. And even though she's moving on to a new school, Ari wants students everywhere to feel safe.
I'm just trying to do as much as I can to like get the message out there that we need to stop all this because I'm scared for them. I mean, I'm scared for myself.
Yet through the uncertainty, she has hope each senseless tragedy will be the last.
If I die in a school shooting, never stop fighting for a world in which I am the last person to ever do so.
The state of Indiana offered free metal detectors after the Noblesville shooting. 94% of public school districts across the state took advantage of the program, including PHM, South Bend, Mishawaka, Goshen, Plymouth, and John Glenn schools.
And Dane, the impact of gun violence on kids has prompted calls for tougher gun laws as well.
That's absolutely right, and it's also caused some stigma. And Second Amendment supporters say it casts them in a negative light. But some say most of the people who own these weapons aren't out to hurt anyone. They say it's the person behind the gun rather than the gun itself. And they all advocate for responsible gun ownership.
It's your Second Amendment right to have a gun, but as a responsible gun owner, you should go out and do more training. You should go out and take lessons. You should go out and practice with your firearm. You shouldn't just buy it and expect it to magically fix everything that could happen to you.
And tonight at 6, I'll look into the stigma attached to gun owners and find out what it takes to become a responsible person with your firearm.
Almost 39,000 people were killed in the U.S. by a gun in 2016.
Yeah, from homicide to suicide, the CDC says nearly 1,000 died here in Indiana. When a mass tragedy occurs, the public often stereotypes gun owners, and many times all gun owners are cast in a negative light.
Millions of Americans own a gun, and often more than one. A report from the American Journal of Public Health states in 2015, about 3 million people carried a loaded, concealed handgun every day.
They're kind of a requirement for living in a free world, are they not?
It's our right as Americans to own a firearm, and with that comes a lot of responsibility.
We sell education, not just guns.
Will Smith is an instructor at Kodiak Firing Range and Training Facility in South Bend. He makes sure the people that come into his shop know the weapon they are dealing with is dangerous and potentially deadly.
First and foremost, we treat every gun as if it's loaded.
From safety to handling and shooting, he wants people to recognize the power these things pack.
Make sense? Good. And they're the great equalizer. Somebody my size, for example, or a lady can't necessarily defend themselves against a group of people or somebody who's much larger.
But not everyone shares his thoughts on the Second Amendment.
United will never be divided.
The Las Vegas massacre, the Texas church shooting, the Parkland, Florida school shooting. Only a few of the massacres that have fueled the already explosive gun debate. Across the nation, people are demanding stricter gun laws, hoping that each mass tragedy is in fact the last, often judging all gun owners the same.
We've had some people write letters to the store after some news stories have aired saying, how dare you if this was your child.
Rebecca Bartol of Femme Fatale fielded calls from people bashing her business, but she wants them to know only a small percentage of gun owners behave badly.
As general, your regular everyday gun owners, they're peaceful people not trying to cause harm or ruin any more gun rights than already have been ruined by the few bad apples.
She works hand in hand with Norman Hood.
We both, I think, would advocate that if you had the ability to shoot a pistol before you bought it, it would make sense.
Together they work with people looking for the ultimate protection.
I think it's just getting to the point where people are more concerned about their personal safety.
He provides people with defensive training skills, and he says now more than ever before, it seems people don't want to be victims.
One of the things that we do is, that I've done to a number of businesses actually, is go in and do a lecture on workplace safety, but workplace safety carries over into personal safety.
But before purchasing these lethal weapons,
such a lightweight gun may be challenging to control.
They say it's a good idea to know exactly how to use it.
It's your Second Amendment right to have a gun, but as a responsible gun owner, you should go out and do more training. You should go out and take lessons. You should go out and practice with your firearm. You shouldn't just buy it and expect it to magically fix everything that could happen to you.
And when you're not packing, make sure it stays locked up and unloaded.
It is also the responsibility of the firearm owner to ensure that their firearms are not in a place that are easily accessible to those that should not be acquiring them.
Target out.
So whether it's just for fun,
Like this? Just like that.
or personal safety,
And then slow press on through.
they say it takes a level of respect to handle these pistols responsibly.
The safety rules these professionals stress are treat every gun as if it's loaded. Never point a gun at anything you don't intend to kill or destroy. Keep your finger off the trigger until you are ready to fire at your target, and always know what your target is and what's beyond it. They also stress keeping that firearm unloaded and locked up when it's not in use, and you really shouldn't advertise that you own a gun.
All right, some very good advice. Thanks, Dane.
No problem.